welcome to this, our very first introductory episode of what will be our podcast. My name is Christian Stephen.
And I'm Dylan Roberts.
And we are conflict journalists who have been traveling the world together for the last, is it 6 years now?
Yeah, let's put it at 6.
We'll say 6. It's probably longer, going to countries like Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Gaza, Sudan, Somalia,
Texas,
yeah. Hawaii, and more places like that. It's interesting. I think one of the first questions to address is, in a world that's so saturated with podcasts, why start one ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's a great format. I think it's a growing format where you can actually have conversations with people. For one, I just see the industry getting more and more involved, and I think just for us, we haven't really told our story or our background, and I think this is just a good way, if anything, just to, maybe we have some insight or some knowledge. I don't know. We know a lot of interesting people, and I think that's one of the best things we can maybe do is, connect with people and tell their stories.
That's interesting. That's a good way to look at it. I was going to say it's an exercise in pure futility and pointless, but that we should do it anyway, like most things in life. Yeah. So let's do it then. I think one of the interesting things in starting a podcast is you never know what it's going to turn into, but we have an idea of sort of where we want to go with this, which is, once we've explained a little bit about ourselves, we'll get to what this will actually become. But I think it's important to outline, who we are, where we've come from, and then we can get to where this is going. So I think, where did we meet? Do you remember?
Oh, man. We had mutual friends in Israel. I was going to Israel in the West Bank just by the 2012 Gaza conflict between Israelis and the Hamas and Gaza Strip. And I just wanted to go. And we didn't actually meet at that time, but we had mutual friends. And then slowly later that year, we connected. I think I just bought a plane ticket and just flew back to Israel. But before that, we did a job together where at the time, how old were you?
I think I was 16.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had a client a nonprofit that wanted to do some work in Somalia. Mm-hmm. And I was like, who should I send? Oh, I know this British guy who seems very well traveled. Let's pair him up with these guys. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it was without meeting. We had a Skype call and you were like, do you want to go to Mogadishu, Somalia? And so since I'd been running around the West Bank shooting pictures and videos of riots, that was the obvious sort of next step. And that was my first proper trip into a full-blown war zone. And then I think we met after that in Israel. We finally met in person.
Yeah, we did. What made you want to go into this kind of work? Like all of a sudden just get into it, go to Somalia?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think the reason you get into something is different from the reason that you stay in it. I know that's been true for us in many ways. I know the reason I wanted to get into this work was because I wanted to prove that I could do it, that I was, like cool, manly, like not afraid of anything. Mm-hmm. And then I got into it and turned out I was shit scared of everything. And so it was funny in the way of what got me into it wasn't what kept me into it. And so after doing a few jobs, I accidentally started caring about what we did deeply and the stories we were telling. But at the very outset, it was because I wanted to be cool. And then after I realized that it was so much more than that, then the work became extremely important. What about you? Why'd you get into it?
Yeah, I always grew up in a family that was traveling, and I think when I was in college, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to do what The Matrix, the film was. I wanted to be in that realm. But it turned out my school didn't offer that and had journalism. And I was just traveling to different countries even within school. And so it was just something I had to do. And obviously the documentary Restrepo pretty much changed my life. That was one of the best documentaries, I think, for every up and coming war journalist now.
One of the best period, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does motivate a lot of people, even though those filmmakers lost so much of their personal lives and literally one of their lives. So when the film, Tim Harrington.
Yeah.
And it's just something I always had to do. I don't know if like wanted to do was the word, but it's just something I feel like I had this call to do it back in the day.
Yeah.
But now thinking about it, I don't really, it was probably just to be cool.
This is jumping ahead, but did you anticipate the personal cost?
No, I didn't. But even then, I remember seeing journalists being interviewed talking about what they went through. In a weird way, I was like, I want to experience that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Not knowing what the actual cost is.
Yeah. I think we were both, I mean, you're a little ahead of me in age, but I think we were both at the stage where we were like, I want to experience the world, whether it's good or bad, whether it's painful or joyous. Like I want to see something real. Like I know for me, growing up, you know, in a televangelist household, you know, I'd sort of grown up with some good people, but also a lot of people who were selling snake oil. And so it was very much a case of like, I need to go find something real, and I need to go see what really is at the beating heart of what makes us human. Right. And when you go looking for something, you generally find it. And I think the basis of this podcast is, you know, having done it for 8 years, basically.
Right.
You know, if you go looking for something, you generally find it. And we've found a lot.
And to be said, it's actually hard to find it.
Yeah.
But if you search hard enough and put yourself, you will find it.
And then it doesn't let you go. You know,
exactly.
Which is very much the case of people are always going on about, you know, they want to see the truth and the unbiased, you know, realness of what the world has to offer. And what most people don't understand is that if you do see that, it can't be unseen. And I think what's interesting about where we'll be going from here is that this podcast and what we're doing with the next phase of our storytelling is much less about let's go find the most, you know, crazy story. And we're moving into a place of we want to show people the things that we found that are important, the things that, you know, that have really resonated with us. So, you know, traveling around, just because you're going to a war zone doesn't mean the front line is the most interesting place. You go to a war zone and you'll find that some of the stories that are in the quietest corners of it can be earth-shattering.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, I think this platform is great for me because I've always been, I'm not an on-camera type of guy, but I do love just having long conversations with someone, and I'm a good listener. So at least for me, I like to have the chance of interviewing some fantastic people that I've known along the way.
I was going to say, it's important we have other people because you and I have shared like 6-hour car rides and we haven't said a word.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's probably good we bring in other people.
Yeah, but I think it's important for us to also talk about things. And for me, I've tried to give advice and information, but it's always hard for me to give that information now to just a person. I was like, what's Iraq like? Or what's war journalism like? Well, okay,
how long do you have?
Yeah. We're in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
this
think
is
it's the best
church,
time.
Sir.
So I think just being able to talk to like yourself and other people about different situations, then that's able for me selfishly to give out and to give, you know, information.
Yeah, I mean, you have good advice. We were talking about this earlier, that if anyone needs advice on how to get in and out of countries safely, they need to ask you, not me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. I think people should tell their story. And that's why I'm excited about doing this, you know, podcast / show. I think it's a great format to have a conversation with someone instead of even a documentary. You don't really know someone unless you actually talk to them for like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
You know, when you're interviewing someone for a 5-minute video and within that interview, you're taking less than a minute of what they're saying, you don't really know who that person is.
Totally.
So
I know some of the most fascinating people that we've met in our travels. You know, you see like 30 seconds of them in some of the reports and documentaries we've done, and we sat with them for hours, but we weren't recording at the time. You know, and it comes down to the place of, you know, it's sort of a privilege that we haven't been able to share with our audiences of the more in-depth conversations that really make those trips, as resonant as they are for us personally. And it also gives context to the things that you see in headlines in the media. Like, you'll understand a place better from having tea with someone for an hour than you will from watching, however many newsreels about it.
Yeah. It's a weird industry right now. I mean, I remember it's good and bad. Like, now before, and not that long ago, to find fixers and information about the country and how to get in, you still had to rely on people who have been there and ask their advice how to get in. Still, email and phone call. It's not like the old days.
Yeah.
But now you can go on Facebook and find fixers and groups and Iraqi groups and Syrian fixers and just find, still you have to find the right person to work with, and then everyone's a journalist in a way. Totally. Or people think everyone's a journalist.
Well, that's the whole thing that comes out with. It's such an interesting thing that with the advent of new technology, it's sort of like, just because you bought a camera doesn't mean you can create a story. Like, it takes years to learn how to tell a story. And this isn't gatekeeping. This is simply just a matter of fact, which is, you can have the newest camera in the world, but unless you can feel what a story should be and the story you should chase and the instincts to go for it, then you'll have trouble with it. And that can be dangerous too, because people with that experience going into hostile environments end up getting killed.
Yeah. Did you do any training before you started going?
See, I'm just a bad example, because the very thing I'm warning people against doing is the exact thing that I did. But that was, when I started and when we started, it was also just before, the smartphone revolution. I mean, they were around, but it wasn't nearly at the place where it's like vloggers weren't huge. You know what I mean? Like, Logan Paul is like one plane away from Iraq, He's going to try and go to North Korea or something and stare at dead bodies.
Yeah, right. Who knows what that guy's going to do? But I can't hate on him, I guess. I guess I can.
I can, and I will.
Yeah. I know in the beginning I cared so much about telling people's stories and really believe in the work, and I guess I still do. But with the rise of, content driven by individuals or just any person with this phone, and I'm just beating a drum because so many people talk about it. It's really affected the industry and how you cover conflict. So it doesn't matter how close you can get. If you're doing, I guess, breaking news, you're not going to beat out the big outlets and everything. Or people just in generally, what's the difference between getting within 5 meters of ISIS versus someone, a mile away behind a blown out building? Yeah.
Well, the issue is also, people are always saying that there's an empathy gap at the moment, or a empathy vacuum, but I don't think people have less empathy. I think there's just so much that's out there that people don't know what to care about.
Because it's still humans, behind what story and they're just editors, I'm sure, just get over saturated with so much content. And
totally. And the thing is, it's quantity over quality now. To get the ad revenue from all of your clicks, you need to make sure that you hit the certain amount of video minutes that you put up. It doesn't matter if those minutes are good. And that's what's changed. So I think finding a way to navigate the industry with the quality that we would want to see out there is an important thing. That's why I think moving into podcasting and the other secret project that we can't talk about yet is really the way forward, I think.
Yeah, I think if someone were to ask me starting out how to get into conflict or just international reporting,
I'd say don't do it.
Yeah. I think just in freelancing in general, if you're starting out, I would say try to work with a company first. Yeah. And then you can always jump into freelancing. I think just before, freelancing was a lot more work, but everyone, there's so many freelancers now.
But it's a gig economy now in the way of sort of
everyone's a freelancer.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. What was some of your, not favorite projects, but what did you enjoy? Because we've been taking a break from, constant covering wars and conflict.
We had to take a break.
Right.
We had to take a break. That's another episode, I think.
Yeah.
That's a longer episode, going into sort of...
But what did you enjoy in the early days of going to those places and prepping and.
I mean, it was the excitement of sort of not, but I mean, at that time we didn't have a reference or a framework for what could go wrong. In the way of like, you can hear what can go wrong, but at that age and also without having experience, you're like, oh, well, that won't happen to me. I'll be fine, And the problem is that, we were extremely lucky for maybe 95% of the time. But I think the exploring different cultures was something, but also being able to see the world through your own agency and sort of being like, this is my, I'm blazing a trail, in doing this thing that I want to do and being able to understand in this certain way. And also no one else was saying it could be done. It was sort of something that, wait, you want to do what? You want to go and do what? Well, you need to go work for CNN or you need to go apply for a BBC and start making teas and coffees. And it was like,
yeah.
But what if we just went?
My dream job was to be like on the BBC international team. I still like the BBC.
Yeah, they're amazing. Well, the training that they give is second to none.
Yeah. I've always wanted to, when I was like starting out, the BBC Cameraman International was like my goal. I want to see, and I would take a job if they offered.
I mean, the thing is, I would just have trouble because if you join the BBC, you have to talk like this whenever you're reporting from a story. This is Christian Stephen from Aleppo.
I don't have a British accent, so they probably wouldn't put me on TV.
It'd be hilarious. It'd be great.
So you grew up traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
What was that like? Traveling at such a young age, and did you think of anything, like did it mold you to what you are now?
It was sort of all I knew. So I mean, my family was in Christian television, so that's sort of religious broadcasting. And so since I was sort of sentient, I was holding a camera, and we were traveling all over the world because that the Christian broadcaster was broadcasting in all those different countries. And so I had sort of the skill set to be shooting in different countries, but I wasn't using that skill set for the thing that I thought, because I mean, when I was extremely young, I thought what my parents did was, basically the worst thing ever. Because most people have that with what their parents do, but I thought it was disingenuous and hypocritical, and I wasn't religious at all. It's only as I got older that I saw the value in a lot of what they did. Right. And that's just come with me going out on my own with you to those places and being able to have sort of the veil lifted in that I can accept more points of view on the world because of what we've seen. But it was important that I had to do it for myself, which I think is a theme for a lot of people when they're young.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up luckily with family who traveled all over my father has probably been to more countries than I have in agriculture, which is a completely different thing than media. But I was lucky enough to learn firsthand different cultures, how to talk, to people who respect different cultures and listening to them. So yeah, I was really lucky when it came to that. And I still enjoy traveling. I think when people ask me, it's like, oh, you're super lucky. But I think at this point in my life,
I mean, the sheer amount of time that you've spent in Iraq, like both of us, but especially you, is just sort of, I think we needed a break,
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think being able to take time off, which is really hard for journalists because so much of that is your income, literally.
Well, that, and you also feel like the world is going on without you.
Exactly. Yeah, there was a point where, and really, I don't really watch news segments. Like, when I'm watching TV, it's like The Office.
Well, think about it. If you make Happy Meals all day, what's the last fucking thing you want to eat at the end of the day? Yeah. You know what I mean? It's sort of, when people always ask me what I think of the news, I'm like, I do not watch the news.
I would have the McRib. No, I've never had that.
But yeah. No, but I think that encompasses nicely, sort of coming to the end of just this short introductory piece that we're doing. It encompasses nicely where we're at in the way of, a lot of what we've done has been going to the most dangerous places to cover the most extreme story. And I think what we're wanting to do here is to be more thoughtful now that we're getting back into it with quite a few years of experience and being more thoughtful, because I think what we're missing now in the modern news landscape is context and the human side of things instead of the political bent. And so I think
we bring two different personalities, which
hugely you could not
get
find
into
two
that.
more different people in the world.
I mean, you live in LA, I live in a small town, Wimberley, Texas, outside of Austin. That's great. So it's very different.
Yeah, and also the most opposite temperaments you could possibly have.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it works well. Like, I mean, we're both creative, but you're a technical genius, and I don't know the first thing about a lot of the things that we use, but I have a nose for a story, which has gotten us in more trouble than I could possibly list, but also has gotten us some pretty interesting stories in themselves. So I think, as this goes on, it's going to be fun to reveal the places we have in mind to take this this episodic podcasting strange leviathan beast of a storytelling machine that we're concocting to show the world.
All right.
No
pressure. Sign off.
Good start.
We'll see how you do. Go ahead and sign off.
Sign off?
Yeah.
That's the end of the podcast.